Okay, good evening from Jerusalem. For those who don't know me yet, my name is Yael Levontin, and I'm the PR and Communications Manager here in Israel for Jewish National Fund USA. Please note that these briefings will continue on through Thursday at 7 p.m. Israel time, 12 p.m. Eastern, and 9 a.m. Pacific. I want to say thank you to the President of Jewish National Fund USA, Saul Lieserbaum, the Board of Directors, and the task force chairs and committees, because everyone is playing a dynamic role. And of course, I would like to thank all of the partners of Jewish National Fund USA. Please consider making a gift today that will help strengthen our friends and family here in Israel. Miriam, if you can, please post the link in the chat. In a little more than a decade, the impact of social media has gone from being an entertaining extra to a fully integrated part of nearly every aspect of daily life for many. As quickly as social media has insinuated itself into politics, the workplace, home life, and elsewhere, it continues to evolve in lightning speed, making it tricky to predict which way it will morph next. Social media has become really fundamental to the way that billions of people get information about the world and connect with each other, which raises the stakes enormously. Many believe that the biggest challenge around the impact of social media may be the way it's changing society. The attention-grabbing algorithms underlining social media can sow confusion, ignorance, prejudice, and chaos, thereby facilitating manipulation and undermining accountability. Any piece of information can now get attention, whether it's true or false. This means more potential for movements, both welcome as well as malevolent. Before, only media companies had reach, so it was harder for false information to spread. It could happen, but it was slow. Now anyone can share anything, and because people tend to believe what they see, false information can spread just as easy, if not more easily, than the truth. No one can deny that the internet has changed the lives for the way people think to the way that they act. Letters no longer take months to cross the ocean, and people living on opposite sides of the globe can see each other's face on a daily basis, just like we are right now, with the help of video conference. In other words, the internet has redefined connection. With Instagram and Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook, acquaintances are only a touch or a click away. However, when your friends and family can easily get to you, haters can do just the same just as easily. In the darkest corners of the internet lurks a dangerous problem: the internet trolls. Internet trolls invade nearly every online platform, spewing hatred for everyone and everything through multiple accounts to guarantee to completely overwhelm their victims. Today, our speaker is Tamar Schwarzbard. Tamar is the head of the new media at the Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs, responsible for Israel's digital footprint online. In her role, Tamar manages Israel's office channels in English and across multiple platforms, reaching hundreds of millions of people around the world. Tamar actually grew up in New York City and moved to Israel 7 years ago, and she currently lives in Jerusalem. Tamar, we would love to hear a little bit about the work you do, especially over the past couple of weeks with Operation Guardians of the Wall. And then we have a few questions prepared. So Tamar.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So first of all, Yael, thank you so much for having me here today. And I also want to give a big thank you to Russell and Saul and the entire JNF team for the incredible work that you guys are doing. Just like on behalf of the state of Israel, we're so appreciative of everything that you guys do for our country and our civilians and our citizens. And also to thank all of you, all of the state of Israel and JNF supporters who are on this call today for taking the time to listen to what I have to say, and also just for your continuous support of Israel. I promise you it does not go unnoticed. So just to give you guys a little bit of background in terms of what I do and what my story is, as Yael mentioned, I'm Tamar. I grew up in New York City. I moved to Israel 7 years ago. I've been at the Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs for 5 years now. I started out as a student, and then I was very fortunate to be able to rise the ranks. And today I serve as the head of new media, which basically means that I'm responsible for Israel's branding online, both in times of crisis and both, during regular calmer times. Just to give you guys a little bit of insight, at headquarters, we are active on social media across 5 different platforms. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Telegram, and TikTok. So actually 6 platforms. From headquarters, we're active in 6 languages. So English, Hebrew, Russian, Spanish, Persian, and Arabic. We have more than 800 digital channels when you're including all of our embassies channels in 50 different languages, and we reach millions of people every single week. On a day-to-day basis, when we're not really in crisis mode, we like to kind of give people an inside view of Israel, kind of share the Israeli story, combat the misconception that Israel is only a place of war and conflict, and highlight the incredible parts of Israel that people might not know about, like the culture, the diversity, the people who are really our best advocates. And during obviously times of conflict and war, what we do looks a little bit different. So a lot of people have been talking about Israel's public image in the past 2 weeks. I want to start off by saying we were fighting a very, very difficult battle, and we definitely are outnumbered. I'm going to put that, out in the open, especially when we're talking about people who are very, I would say, trigger friendly, meaning people who are just ready to tweet things out and post things out without necessarily looking at the effects of what they tweet, especially when we're dealing with celebrities who might not know so much about the conflict, but then put out very dangerous and insightful messages to millions of followers. We are outnumbered. Having said that, I want to say I'm incredibly proud of the work that our team has done in the past week. I can tell you in the past week and a half alone, we reached over 250 million people, which is pretty incredible. Just through our work on social media, we gained 600,000 new followers across all our platforms, which is also pretty incredible because it gives us an opportunity to reach new people and share Israel's narrative with a global audience. But I also want to say it's been a very difficult 2 weeks. It's been a very overwhelming 2 weeks. Me on a personal level, just as like a representative of the state of Israel, I've gotten a lot of hate. Israel has gotten a lot of hate on social media from people who really don't know anything about the conflict. And also what's scary is there is so much misinformation about Israel that is being spread that I think it's something we should all be worried about. I cannot tell you the amount of photos I saw posted that came from Syria, that came from Afghanistan. I cannot tell you the amount of people who were reporting fake news. I cannot even tell you the amount of anti-Semitic messages I've seen over the past 2 weeks. And I think it's something that we should be all very worried about and concerned about. But on the other hand, I think it's really beautiful and heartwarming to be with such a friendly group today who I know are our allies and support Israel and stands with us. And I do think that maybe people aren't so outspoken, but I do think we have more people who support us and love us than we realize. And I also want to say that as the state of Israel, we're not shying away from criticism. We're not shying away, from even the negative messages that we're receiving. What we are combating and what we're doing very openly is responding to the people who call for our destruction. We're not shying away from that. I can just give you guys one example of something that we did on social media that was a little bit controversial but went viral in the last week. I'm sure you guys have all heard by now of the Bella Hadid controversy. Just to give you guys a little bit of background, Bella Hadid is a very well-known supermodel in the United States who has a following of, I want to say, over 50 million people online. And sometimes what celebrities don't realize is that their words have consequences. And I would even go so far as to say that what we're seeing in terms of what's happening in America and anti-Semitic attacks, I think is a direct result of the rhetoric and the misinformation online that's being spread about Israel. So just to give you guys 2 examples. Example number 1, Bella Hadid has been very active in the Palestinian cause. It's her right as a Palestinian. I don't argue with that, but I think there's a fine line between activism and anti-Semitism. She uploaded a video from a march with Palestinian protesters. One of them, actually not one of them, a few of them were yelling from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. She marched alongside them. Now, a lot of people don't know, including a lot of people who are supportive of the Palestinian cause, they don't realize that this is the phrase that is used by Hamas, by the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, two terrorist groups that basically call for the annihilation, the ethnic cleansing of Israel. And when she posted that video, we responded to her. We made a decision. We said we're not shying away from it. And we basically tagged her and we said, Bella Hadid, when you march besides people who are basically calling for the annihilation of the Jewish state, this is not an Israeli-Palestinian issue. This is a human rights issue, and you should be ashamed of yourself. And this tweet went viral. It was like in every single magazine. Obviously, Palestinian supporters were very turned off of it. But I can say as the head of new media, the bottom line is we do not shy away from telling the truth. We do not shy away from speaking out against people who call for Israel's destruction or who spread misinformation. And that is something that we're going to do no matter how much hate we get. And I just want to say to you guys, because I'm assuming a lot of you are in North America, as a Jew, as somebody who has family in North America, as somebody who has parents in North America and siblings and nieces and nephews, I want to say that I'm standing with all of you during this difficult time with the rise of anti-Semitism. I think it's abhorrent in terms of what's going on, and I support you guys and I stand with you guys, and I thank you guys for supporting us and for, you know, standing by Israel with your work through the JNF. And it means a lot to us. So I guess on that note, I'm just going to close down my introduction to kind of give you guys a little bit of insight into what we do. I can go on and on and on, but I know that Yael did mention that there were a couple of questions. So Yael?
Yeah. Thank you, Tamar.
Sure.
Actually, as you were speaking, more and more questions are coming in, but let's start with the ones.
No problem.
Let's start with the ones that we prepared. So
Sure.
you actually talked about this now. Online trolls have been the bane of rational civil internet users since the beginning of the web. It turns out, obviously, when you give certain people the shield of anonymity to hide behind in the form of a computer screen, things get ugly. And I think one of the biggest issues is how do we, okay, not the state of Israel, but we as individuals tackle the hate and the trolls that call out Israel and spread anti-Semitism and lies?
So I think that's an excellent question. I want to start by saying that it sounds very cliche to say, but every single person can make a difference. We've seen that in this conflict. We've seen people that have very small followings on social media who have spoken out against what's happening online in terms of all of this rhetoric against Israel and also against Jews, and their tweets have gone viral. So I would ask you guys to keep speaking out, whether you're on social media or not, even just having conversations with your friends who might not know about Israel and who might not have the same nuanced perspectives as you guys have, both as Jews, both as people, you know, who have been to Israel or who are familiar with the Israeli-Arabic conflict. So I would say to speak out on social media, that's number one. I would say to me, what's most disturbing is that people aren't afraid to use their names to be anti-Semitic and to basically spread blood libels against Israel. In the past, we've noticed a lot of people speaking, you know, from an anonymous point of view, not giving their names. That's not the case anymore. We now see, as I said, celebrities with millions of followers who aren't anonymous, who have an enormous influence, who are basically spreading misinformation about Israel and who don't realize that their, you know, actions have consequences. I can give you guys two examples. Mark Ruffalo, who has been a critic of Israel for a long time, came out a couple of days ago. He retweeted one of our tweets to his millions of followers and wrote, "What Israel is doing, okay, is genocide." Now, first of all, that's completely false on any scale. Any way we're measuring what Israel is doing, even the most extreme way to measure it, what's happening in the Gaza Strip is not genocide. And I think it's also an insult to the 6 million Jews who were killed in the Holocaust. From my perspective, I also think it's a form of Holocaust denial to do that. But when you have a person who has millions of followers, by the way, he apologized, which is a step in the right direction. That's a huge step. He put out a tweet today apologizing for accusing Israel of genocide. But when you are using your name and your celebrity status to basically defame Israel and to spread misinformation, which can ultimately lead to the loss of Jewish lives, as we've seen time and time again. That's what's scary to me. I can also give you guys another example. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a platform called Clubhouse. It's an audio-based platform where basically people can have conversations in real time about real issues. And recently, the platform has been accused of a lot of anti-Semitism because it's not moderated. And there's a lot of anti-Semitism that goes on there. I can tell you, I've experienced it with my own eyes. Just to give you guys perspective, a couple of weeks ago, I was in a room. It's basically, it works that there are rooms where different speakers can have different conversations in real time. I entered a room, which was an Iranian room, speaking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I messaged one of the people in the room. I said, I noticed, that this conversation is going on in Farsi. Please feel free to tell anybody in the room. I'm an Israeli. I'm more than happy to answer questions. So the beginning of the conversation was really smooth. I really felt like there was mutual respect. I was getting a lot of questions. I felt like, wow, this is a step in the right direction. And then I had somebody say to me, with her name, okay, so again, not anonymously, with her name, she said to me, I just want to tell you that as an Israeli, you should be ashamed of yourself. You have blood on your hands. You are responsible for genocide. And that for me really was a disturbing and a very difficult comment because I am the product of 4 grandparents who survived Auschwitz and who experienced genocide. And I called her out on that. And then there were people in the room who proceeded to question the validity of the Holocaust. And that's where I drew the line. And I said, I'm out. The second it comes to Holocaust denial, I will not partake in this conversation. So Yael, I think what's very scary is it's not just dealing with trolls now who hide behind anonymous names. It's dealing with people who are proud to incite violence and hate and misinformation. And that's why I'm saying from our side, as Israelis, as Jews, as people who are supportive of the state of Israel, we can no longer be anonymous. We need to stand up with our names, with our faces, to show that we're willing to, tell the truth and stand against anti-Semitism and stand for Israel during this difficult time. So I ask of you guys to speak up and to do that in your own way. So I guess that's my answer, my long answer to the question.
That's a great answer. Another question, do you ever get
Sure.
frustrated at the disproportionate activity online that you actually mentioned in the beginning? So many false images and lies, it almost feels like a losing battle. I know that for my own experience, even when we were on these calls, we were Zoom bombs and a lot of hate, vulgar words, images. Do you just feel like smashing your computer sometimes?
So yes, I feel like throwing my phone out the window very, very often, especially in the past 2 weeks. I can say we usually get like a lot of comments every single day that are critical of Israel, even anti-Semitic. The past 2 weeks has just been awful, to say the least, just in terms of like the hate that we've gotten. And there has been such a disproportionate response, because I think a lot of people tend to hide behind anti-Semitism, behind anti-Zionism to espouse and express their anti-Semitic views. That's a trend that we've been seeing lately. I think it's also because a lot of people are uneducated. And I also think because in the period of social media, everyone thinks that their opinion is valid no matter what. And people are so quick to tweet out information without even checking twice. And it can be very discouraging. It can be very difficult. But our country and our people has been through a lot worse than some nasty tweets. I think we all know that. I think we're all products of, the hundreds of years of violence and difficulties that our people, have faced over the years. And I remind myself when I think about my grandparents and I think about my country and my own personal history, we've been through a lot worse. And even if I'm changing a few opinions, I've done my job. Just to give you guys 2 positive, things that have come out from all of this. First of all, the unity amongst Israelis is incredible. I've had Israeli celebrities with millions of followers reach out to me and ask me what they can do to help Israel's Hasbara efforts and to share, Israel's story with the world, which during these times is not easy. You see how much flack people get for being pro-Israel. And that to me is just a beautiful, positive thing I've seen. I can literally say hundreds of Israelis from young to old, literally hundreds of Israelis have gotten my number, have WhatsApped me, messaged me on LinkedIn, sent me emails asking how they can help. That's extremely heartwarming. And I can also say on our Arabic speaking channels are some of the largest channels that we have here at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We've gotten thousands of messages from people in the Arab world, from Morocco, Dubai, Bahrain, even countries that we don't have relations with, messaging us privately and saying they support with us and stand with us. And that's a trend we've never seen before. And a lot of them are scared to speak out, because there are consequences for them. So they choose to message us privately. But even those thousands of private messages really give us, the strength that we need to be able to continue working, even if it feels like an uphill battle.
Well, that's a great answer. Thank you, Tamar. Actually, Jewish National Fund USA is running our "This is what Zionism looks like" campaign. And I ask everyone on this call to please go online, upload your picture, put it on your social media accounts, speak up, be part of the conversation. Tamar, actually, a segue into the next question. I think that you kind of gave a few answers already. What are some kind of examples of positive messages that all of us here at Jewish National Fund USA can start using? Does your team have a campaign responding to false tweets with hashtags like, I don't know, hashtag fake news? And what can we do, the people of Jewish National Fund USA, how can we get involved?
So I think that's a really amazing question. And I appreciate your willingness for all of you to get involved, because it's so not something that should be taken for granted, especially during these difficult times when a lot of Jews and Israelis are getting backlash for speaking up. I would say, keep in mind that the conflict is not simple, okay? It's a complicated conflict. But when we're talking about this last, I would say, period of fighting between Israel and Hamas, the facts are on our side, okay? The truth is on our side. People are very quick to put out misinformation, as I said, to put out fake photos. This is what's troubling to me also. I think for a lot of people, the conversation has shifted from, does Israel have the right to defend itself, to, well, Jews don't really have a connection to the land of Israel. They have no history here. So I think a positive message that all of you guys can share is to talk about our history, is to talk about our connection with this country, which spans not 100 years, not 200 years, thousands of years. And this isn't just rhetoric. There's proof, there's archaeological proof, there's historical proof. All you need to do is open Josephus and to read his writings, which talk about, when the Jews were under Roman occupation and eventually exiled from the land of Israel. So I would say, first, combat misinformation, combat, lies that you're seeing on the internet from people that you know and people that you don't know, because at the end of the day, the facts are on our side, and we're putting out hundreds of posts, every single day across all of our platforms that kind of fight this misinformation. You're all free to use our materials, which include infographics and photos and quotes to kind of tell the Israeli narrative. And I would also say, don't just focus on the negative. There's so much beauty that Israel has to offer, aside from the conflict. And this is something that we're going to have to use to rehabilitate our image, moving way past, the conflict. So talking about Israel's culture and history and its people. I mean, Israeli people, I think, are the best symbol, are the best representation of what our country has to offer. So focusing on those stories as well. And also focusing on the unity that we've seen here in Israel and between Israel and diaspora Jewry during this period. I mean, the incredible work that the donors of JNF are doing to help Israelis, whether it's building bomb shelters, offering relief to people in need here. I mean, these are the stories that we should be highlighting. So just to kind of tie all of those loose ends together, one, tackle misinformation with the facts, because again, the facts are on our side. 2, be proud of our Jewish heritage, be proud of our Jewish connection to the land, to the state of Israel, and tell those stories. And 3, talk about the positive, beautiful elements of Israel that will continue to exist well past, this operation that we've experienced for the past 2 weeks.
Tamar, I feel like I could talk to you for another 2 hours. I'm sure everyone can listen for another 2 hours. The questions just keep coming in. So I'm just gonna, I guess, pick 1 or 2 more questions, guys.
Sure, I'm at your disposal.
Tamar, do you reach out to any of the celebrities and try to educate them with actual information? I'm not talking about the Bella and Gigi Hadid's. That's way beyond trying to educate somebody. It would be to reprogram people. But we've seen Noah Trevor that was going on, and John Oliver that had very hateful and anti-Semitic clips on YouTube that gained millions and millions of views. Do you ever reach out to them and say, guys, you are completely wrong?
So we try. I would say that's where it's tricky, because at the end of the day, we are a government. And it's not the best form of policy for a government to start like reaching out to celebrities one-on-one and to try educating them about Israel. I think because a lot of celebrities are not interested in hearing from a government because they view a government as biased to begin with. And because B, we don't necessarily have the time and resources to do that. What has been done is we've been working with thousands of, young Jewish voices and influencers online who are extremely active online. And we've worked with them to kind of reach out to celebrities and to share their perspectives, both as Jews and Israelis. And I have to tell you, in some cases, the results have really been astonishing. They've been well beyond anything that I could have imagined. We've had celebrities say, wow, I didn't know that. We've had celebrities take down their posts, which have been inflammatory. We've had people, like Mark Ruffalo, who's a very well-known anti-Israel advocate for decades, apologize, which from our perspective is a huge deal, even if it doesn't seem like a big deal to people who aren't familiar with what he stands for. So we're working with influencers all the time to have them share Israel's story. And I think it's working. Again, I think it's an uphill battle, but at the same time, I think it takes one voice, it takes one person to be able to combat, all of these misconceptions, because at the end of the day, I choose to believe most people are good and most people are just misinformed when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I think if you present facts in a respectful, polite, educated, informed manner, every single person can have an effect in changing perspectives.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So I have one more question from a very special guest, our president of Jewish National Fund USA. Saul, are you here? Gary, can you unmute Saul so he can speak and ask his question, please?
There you go. So hi, Tamar.
Hi.
To follow up on the last question, I can understand the government not reaching out to these celebrities. It would be difficult for them to receive a message, let's say, from a government entity. But are there third-party, non-government entities that you could work with that would be the messenger, a non-government messenger to some of these people?
So I think that's an excellent question. And we have really good relationships with a lot of these non-governmental entities. And we don't even have to pass the message along because they're doing the work without us even asking for it. I mean, I know the ADL and other, Jewish groups and Jewish voices have been reaching out to celebrities directly. And I think that is the correct route. I think, different NGOs who are invested in preventing anti-Semitism, these are the people who should be reaching out to people who speak against Israel and speak against, the Jewish people, and they have been doing it. And I think they're doing a great job, even with us having to ask them to do it. And we work with these partners and we're proud to work with partners like the JNF and, the ADL and the Conference of Presidents. And we'll continue to work with these different NGOs and Jewish organizations to make sure that Jewish voices are heard and to make sure that anti-Semitism around the world from celebrities and regular individuals, no matter their status, is not tolerated.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tamar. Wow, literally we can sit here for another 2 hours having these conversations because you're absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for spending time with us here today. To everyone on our call, all I can say is that we post incredible, positively Israel stories on our media pages all the time. I ask you all, since we're talking about social media, to go to follow, to like both Jewish National Fund USA pages, your professional pages, professionals and their personal pages, as well as mine. You're always welcome. I will approve you all. And all I can tell you is just spread the good news, like Tamar said, and just keep being positive, and we're going to get through this, right, Tamar?
Yes. And I just want to say thank you again to Yael and to the whole JNF team for hosting me. I also included in the chat my email address in case anyone wants to contact me privately with other questions so that we can continue the conversation. So please feel free to reach out to me via email, via LinkedIn. And just thank you to the JNF and to all of the JNF supporters for all of the amazing work you're doing to support Israel during these very difficult times.
Thank you, Tamar. To everyone else, just remember, we'll be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. Israel time, 12 p.m. Eastern, and 9 a.m. Pacific time. And all I could say, like every night, is good night from Jerusalem. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.